Good morning and welcome to the National Newspaper Publicists Association's Let It Be Known. It is Friday, October the 28th, 2022, another month just about expired. As a Black man who was the first in his family to go to college, Eugene Manley Jr., who is a PhD and Director of STEM Workforce Initiatives at LUNGevity Foundation, knows firsthand the obstacles that minority researchers and clinicians face in academia, which led him to create a new mentoring program that complements funding for underrepresented scientists in STEM. Much needed funding, we should say. The LUNGevity Foundation's Minority Mentorship and Training Program launched just now with the ultimate goals of increasing diversity in the lung cancer workforce, better serving an increasingly diverse patient population, and ensuring that minority researchers and clinicians have the support and training they need to thrive in their careers. Joining us to discuss this is none other than Dr. Eugene Manley Jr. Good morning, Dr. Manley.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here and happy to discuss this program and why it's important.
Well, absolutely. Well, let's start. First of all, we're going to dive into the program and dive into, you know, how the STEM field again. It's a field that we are. Everyone is trying, or at least talks about trying to get more people of color involved. But we're going to talk about that. But let's talk about you first. You were the first to graduate college in your family. What did that feel like, and what was the driving force behind your choice?
Well, it was a long road because I didn't have a framework for how to go in advance. I just knew as a kid I was a chronic asthmatic. I had a lot of allergies. Oddly, I loved Transformers, so I loved engineering and medicine. And I just said, how can I find a way to help cure disease or treat disease? And then that sort of became a theme that stuck with me. And as a kid, I was a bookworm. I stayed in books, and I don't know why I did, but
You was a nerd.
yes, very much so. Very much, I was team nerd. No doubt about that. So,
Oh wow! And being a bookworm, um, I can only imagine other kids because kids are brutal. we could be brutal when we're young, but you stuck with it. What gave you that motivation though? Because again, as we said at the top, you're the first to graduate college in your family, so you had not seen that type of educational progress before.
I am probably a anomaly. I'm just doggedly determined. I sort of know what I want to do, and I will just do it no matter what people say or do. And being a bookworm as a kid, you don't get a lot of you deal with stuff. And when I used to spend summers in the South, and then I would come back from listening to all these rock videos, and then I'd be like, "Oh, you're singing rock videos." So then you hear a whole bunch of stuff about that, and you're just like, "Just keep going, just do what you got to do."
Now, wait a minute, Dr. Manley, you didn't complete that other sentence. As a bookworm, as a kid, you don't get a lot of what?
As a bookworm,
Linda, Linda
you know,
Preston
you
Wagner says that go team nerd. She says go team nerd. So
yeah, you don't get a lot of love in the hood. Like, what, you nerd? You speak too proper. Like, I'm good. I'm doing what I need to do.
so tell us more about the LUNGevity Foundation and its mission.
LUNGevity is nation's leading lung cancer patient advocacy organization, and our mission is to really ensure that we have a world free of lung cancer, and so that and everyone is cured. And we do this in numerous ways. We fund research grants. We do a lot of patient education. We have patient resources and downloadable materials on the website in English and Spanish, specifically things about navigating your lung cancer diagnosis and the different types of testing that can be done. We're in various campaigns to increase awareness in minority communities about biomarker testing. And then I do a lot of the work in STEM outreach. I run some health equity webinars, and I do some academic partnerships. But the big thing that I really have done is this mentorship program.
Wow, and obviously the lack of STEM, the lack of representation in STEM has alienated minority scholars. who often face bias and racism at all career stages, leading many to believe to leave, I should say, academia. Many people talk about the importance of STEM, particularly with Black and other people of color. Why has it been such an arduous task getting people of color into the STEM field?
Well, the problem actually starts even before you get to college. It starts as early as where you're growing up. Because typically, if you're in an inner city area that's poor and under resourced, you usually see no one that's a scientist. You see no one that's an engineer. You see no one that's a clinician. And then often you get told what you can't do, what you can't amount to, and you have to be fit in a box. But we
Mhm.
know that really impedes your progress. And so, really, if you want to increase the output, we really need to start engaging kids around second, third grade when their minds are very receptive to anything, and then you can sort of start doing science outreach and programs. And if you can keep them engaged in science early before they find sports and other activities, not that sports are bad, but if you can get them engaged in science early and have them stay engaged and they keep seeing people that look like them, then there's a greater chance for them to go into science fields.
Now, I had teachers who looked like me when I was in grade school. Um, I hated science. I absolutely abhorred it. It was just, it was like, taking your nails against the chalkboard. And just, I hated it. Um, and I know of others who just simply, as that at that age, hate science. How do you instill in them? How do you change that for someone like myself? I could think about when I was 8 years old, many moons ago, and I just couldn't, I tuned out my science teacher for the most part until it was time to take a test, and when I got my little, C just to get by. But how do you change that in a child?
Well, the thing is, some children, will migrate to things they will naturally like, and others, if they get exposure to things, they will end up liking it, or others just love science right away. Those are the easiest ones. But you start by really making science, I wouldn't say more accessible, but making it more relatable and using more active demonstrations that people can see in everyday life. Like if you just use, strict equations to talk about technical terms, engineering terms, but if you can make it relatable, it then makes people say, I understand this. And so that's how you do it.
Mm. And so it's been a obviously, again, as we stated, it's been one of those things where we know, for the most part, people of color, particularly African Americans, we have a mistrust of medical science in general, right? We have a mistrust in things that involve the government. STEM, when they're saying, and we know it's true that there's some great careers in the STEM field, many look at it as, okay, but that's not meant for us. Isn't there a lot of works to be done? And why haven't, I mean, we've been hearing a lot about it more recently, it seems, in recent years, the importance of STEM, but why hasn't that been, why do you believe that hasn't been a big issue even decades ago?
Well, people always, we always know we need the diverse teams and diverse outputs really make things better. But and at certain levels, there are gatekeepers that don't want to see change and they don't want to see diversity and they don't want to think, how do we have a more representative workforce? There are things you can do, and there are places you can find scholars. Some people feel you have to go to only HBCUs, and that's perfectly fine. But there are minority scholars everywhere. You just have to go out of the main science conference. You have to go to the conferences that the scientists, the underrepresented scholars go. So things like SACNAS, Abercams, National Medical Association. If you go to those conferences, you will find the scholars, and they will come from a wide range of institutions.
Yeah, and in addition to Dr. Manley, the issue of a lack of diversity in the workforce, it is well known that minority patients have better outcomes when they are clinicians, and I think you've touched on this, when their clinicians look like them, as they have more confidence that they will be listened to and treated fairly. So, Dr. Manley, we talk about getting more people interested in the STEM field, but how do we get more? What's the what's the magic potion to get more clinicians involved?
Well, this sort of goes back to how many do we get into STEM fields in undergrad? Just think those that we get in undergrad are those that already come many barriers that have been placed on them from the beginning of their lives. And so as they go through college, specifically college, as you go further up in your degree and in your years, it will get much less diverse, and you will often find yourself being the only person in a space. And then when you're in the space, you may see issues or things you'd like to bring up, but then you say, okay, how much can I raise an issue? Because you're sort of in the back of your head thinking, oh, I have to sit and be a beacon and make sure I get the next minority and behind me. But then, okay, how much change can I push for before they get frustrated and run me out with pitchforks? So you always are trying to balance, trying to make change and impact, but still trying to be true to yourself. And it's really tough because a lot of schools will say they want diversity, they want representation, but they generally then will bring you in and then they want you to serve only on the diversity committees or to talk to minority scholars. And then your scholarship and your research lacks because you were doing all this service. And then you were often the only minority at an institution, all the minority students run to you because they have no one else they can talk to. So then you're doing service that you aren't getting acknowledged for. So it's really challenging. So trying to put more structures in place to really help them learn to navigate the systems, get the career skills they need, and help them navigate the difficult environments they're in are key.
Yeah, we're speaking with Dr. Eugene Manley Jr., the Director of STEM Workforce Initiatives at LUNGevity, at the LUNGevity Foundation, I should say. The foundation, so tell us a little bit more. When did it start? And what was the, what got you to get so involved? Because you can go ahead and just work in the STEM field. I mean, you have all the credentials, but what got you so involved where you felt like, you know what? I'm going to take this over and take this on myself, and we're going to make this LUNGevity Foundation something that people are going to talk about, people are going to utilize and remember.
So that's a very good question because um, I saw a lot of smoking when I was growing up, and so that always was in the back of my head as something I wanted to study. I didn't foresee that my PhD would be in combination drug therapies for lung cancer and cancer stem cells and gene therapy to block enzymes that inhibit anti-cancer drugs. But I took that skill and training and said, okay, how can I apply this? And so I trained in breast cancer, did some stuff in orthopedics, but eventually I still come back to lung cancer. And the main reason is, lung cancer is a leading cause of cancer death worldwide, and a second leading cause behind cardiovascular diseases. And in particular, lung cancer is one of the leading causes of death and mortality of Black patients. And while this is true, the workforce in thoracic oncology significantly is under reflected by the patient populations that have the highest incidence in mortality. And so as my career, I've been in many mentorship programs and been on supplemental grants, and they will provide funding, but they don't really do the holistic mentoring aspect. So, how do you not just throw funds at the problem, but how do you really overcome these hidden barriers that really prevent them from excelling? And so, and over the last 5 years, I really thought if I could make a program that would address those invisible issues that are always there, that we can make an impact. And so I was brought in March, and they said, go. And I said, are you sure? Because this is going to be a big thing. And I said, don't give me just carte blanche to design something. And they said, go. And I said, okay, here we are.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Dr. Manley, one Facebook, it says Facebook user, the name is not showing. So forgive me, whoever this might be, for not saying your name because it's not there. But it's the individual says, I appreciate the work you are doing, Dr. Eugene Manley. I can relate. Also, being the first in my family to go to college, and also can relate as an academic facing obstacles as a minority researcher. Thanks again for the important work you are doing. So a big shout out to you there, Dr. Manley.
Thank you. That it's true. And we sort of sit in silos, and we really don't get to see any other minority researchers unless they are directly in our department. Or, when you go to conferences, especially if you're a trainee, you have to determine if your professor or PI is going to let you go to a conference. And then even if you go, you may still not know the other people, especially at the big meetings. That could, and we have differently poster sessions that may run one day, or people are presenting one day over 4 different days, and so there could be other minorities at these conferences, but you will not see them because it's just we're so diffuse, for lack of a better term, and so we just don't get to have that camaraderie. So really, just trying to bring them the skills and tools to really help them grow and flourish.
And the mystery has been solved. The individual is none other than Dr. David Childs from Northern Kentucky University, who we've had the privilege of having on this program a couple of times at least, and look forward to seeing Dr. Childs again. Dr. Manley, you talk about lung cancer, any cancer really. When you think about it, it seems like everything is, we use this word all the time, disproportionately affects people of color, particularly African Americans. Um, as you do research, are you finding more reasons why that might be the case?
Well, we have some core root issues. Often, Black patients are diagnosed at later stages, when their disease is more advanced, so it's harder to treat. But often also they aren't giving the same standard of care as other patients, and this could be due to bias by providers. It could be due to some racism. It could be often, minority patients don't know about clinical trials. Their doctors don't tell them about clinical trials. But if you there's was studies, so if you did notify patients about clinical trials and biomarker testing, you could increase uptake. So if you at least make them aware of these options, you can then do early detection and save more lives. They just never get this information early enough.
And Dr. Manley, in your travels and in what the work that you're doing, are you optimistic? Are you finding more? Uh, are people of color being more receptive to STEM and to what you're what you're doing?
Well, people of color have always been receptive to STEM. It's just, has STEM been receptive to them? That's really, there was some Pew, I think it was a Pew study that literally asked Black high school students how much they've been exposed to science, and it was a very low percentage. And then if you ask those that went to college what were their perceptions of STEM, you had a different percentage of Black that said, okay, these fields are welcome. And then when you looked at those that actually went through and got degrees, the percentage of minorities that thought STEM was welcoming dropped. So as soon as you get to degree, you still see the hidden barriers, the walls, professionalism is a term for you must act a certain way, but it's not, it's the standard, whatever that is, you can't be your authentic self because that's unprofessional. So
Mhm.
you still, even with your degrees and training, you still are navigating environments that want you to still be in a box, and it's tough. And so you have to learn to really think core about what you're doing and try to stick with that and do what you can and try to help those that you want to help.
Yeah, and from what you've seen, Dr. Manley, and perhaps you even have stats on this, um, who has been more inclined in among people of color? What gender? Women, men? Who have been more inclined to delve into that field and to be more interested?
Well, we have an underrepresentation of minority men and women across the board. I will say, if my memory is correct, that there are still many more female doctors than male doctors. And that's not saying a lot because the numbers are still low across the board. So, how do we give them more exposure to medicine, medical fields? How do we get them that training? How do we make them feel seen, respected, and give them, you know, other things like these ancillary skills, like, how to do retirement accounts, how to do chalk talks, how to do wills and live in trust. So these are other things I put in my program. The invisible stuff that you need that you just don't know because you've never been exposed to it.
So so you're at a conference now. Now, isn't it? And I mentioned the conference only because when you go and speak with people, um, isn't it better to hear it from someone who looks like you? So a black male or even a black female to go talk to uh, young, younger black and brown individuals.
Oh yes, that always. You can you can't discount the presence of someone that looks like you with that degree or advanced degree that can still talk to you in relatable terms, and still let you know, yes, you can do it. And just that, it's just that spark, like, okay, I see them, okay, I can do it, I can keep pushing. Because most of the time the rest of the world will tell you what you can't do. So if you just see that person, like, okay, I can aspire to do this, like there's a pathway. And so yes, that presence is very, very important, especially when you're never seen routinely.
Yeah, and just talking, not from a. I mean, we are on a computers or whatever, but even that face to face, that in person contact, doesn't that mean a lot too?
Oh yes, it's critical. It's critical. They're like, oh, you're real. Like you're listening to me. You're talking to me. Like I can do these things. Like there's this technique for that. Like and it just opens a world of possibilities that they never think about because it's just not in their immediate vicinity.
Yeah, and again, the Dr. Eugene Manley is the director of STEM workforce initiatives at Longevity Foundation. Um, so, Longevity Foundation, how do individuals, how do we benefit from the Longevity Foundation, and how do people know more about the Longevity Foundation? Where can we get the information?
Well, easiest place to go is www.lungevity.org. That's our main website. And then on the landing page, you will see information about information to navigate as a patient, information to navigate as a researcher, and then you'll see some of the health equity stuff that we're starting to build up. And so we have a lot of resources under Lung Cancer 101. That'll be the more patient literate materials that you can print and download. And I think some of this information is also in Spanish. And so that's a lot of information and just resources about lung cancer, navigating your diagnosis. We have different Facebook groups for patients with different mutations with lung cancer, so they can meet and learn about that. Like I said, I'm launching this mentorship program, and then soon we'll start getting those health equity webinars that I have been doing on the website. That's sort of the next thing. So those are coming down the pipeline.
And what exactly is the goal of the mentorship program? And do you are you confident you can reach that goal?
Of course, I can reach that. That I can. That one I say I can do. So, but the real goals of the mentorship program are these. Right now, the awardees are our health equity and inclusiveness grant awardees, and so these are postdocs, clinical fellows, and early career faculty within the first 5 years of their faculty role. And these are minority individuals that are dedicated to working in minority and underserved communities, addressing disparities, and then wanting to mentor the next generation of minority scholars. And so once they get that award, they've been opted into the mentorship program that I've created. And sort of high level, the 4 real goals of the program are to give them this training in thoracic oncology, and specifically grant writing in thoracic oncology from a health equity lens. So that means, there are different aspects like basic research, clinical trial design, health services research, and communication, but, really teaching them how to think about health equity, how to account for minority and underserved individuals, and to not just exclude them because there were only 10 in a study. Like, no, you really have to think why they should be there, why they're needed. And then you can do this in your work and as you review other work, so you can make sure that as trials progress, we have patient populations that reflect those that have the worst disease. We have put multiple external mentors in the program that will meet with them at different frequency. Some will help them with grant writing. Some will help them with their day-to-day or month to month. Just what do you need professionally? What can I help you? How can I provide for you? I'll meet with them quarterly to see how they're adjusting in their labs and their environments. Are they in a place where they're going to grow and flourish? Because a lot of times you get a grant and then you only hear from your agency when your annual report is due. But that doesn't tell you if the person you're working for is good for you, is treating you with respect, if you're in a lab with many of the isms. And so we want to make sure that you are seen and respected. The other thing is, like I said, the ancillary program, which will be a lot of things in professional life, career, and personal development. It doesn't mean we will do everything, but over time, we can change these courses every year so they get different things. So this year they will get implicit bias and racism, how to be a mentor, how to write a mentor letter recommendation, and retirement accounts, like specifically 401ks, IRAs, fixed date accounts, what these accounts means, how do you do mutual funds, how do you set your salary to try to bring maximum wealth, based on your career stage, because generally as a trainee, you have no money. But but teaching you long-term how to start thinking about that. And then giving them exposure to alternative career paths. So we want to have an in-person session where we have 3 or 4 career panels with people that have taken their degrees and have transitioned out of academia or medicine. Because often when you're in the academia, you don't know how to transition out. So we just want them to be able to see how you can leverage your skills to leave. That doesn't mean we want you to leave, but we want to do one of 2 things with the program. We want to make sure that if you're in thoracic, you know how to write a grant, you prepare one, submit one, and then if you can stay in academic or medicine, you can then serve as a leader. You can start serving on reviews for grants. And then as you get in that workforce, you start increasing workforce diversity. And if we have more workforce diversity, then that means more likely your minority patients are going to get more information about clinical trials, biomarker testing, and then you're going to get more patients that'll see more doctors that look like them, and they'll have more confidence in the treatments they're going to get. But if you do not stay in academia medicine, we still want you to have the tools and skills to be able to go to any professional career path you desire. And so I don't want to restrict people. So many programs say you must do this, this, and this. I said, no, you never know what's going on in the back of their mind or what's going on in their life externally that they're not telling you. And you don't impose. Just give them the framework and the tools and the support to succeed, and then let them go.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions by way of David Youngblood, who writes in. He says, can you scale up? Are you applying for additional federal funding? And are you reaching out to HBCU's STEM departments?
I'm already on top of this. So as you know, right now, I started this position in March, and part of our effort is to do more outreach with minority communities. So right now I'm at the SACNAS Diversity and STEM Conference, which is the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science. And so I'm at the conferences where we would get a lot of the minority STEM scholars. They don't necessarily, these all may not necessarily be in lung cancer, but the goal is just to let them know we have materials. But also a lot of them may still have family members that have lung cancer. And so in that vein, you can still let them know we have patient resources, we have research grants, we have other funding opportunities. We do a lot of education. We do presentations for groups. And so just let them know we have all these materials.
No, he wants to know specifically about HBCUs.
Well, we do have working on something with Morehouse. I can't officially say it, but we are doing some partnerships started to do some partnerships on the HBCUs to train minority doctors and public health researchers in lung cancer and thoracic oncology. And as we grow the program, that is a longer term goal. And like in 5 years, we really want to morph this into a leadership and training institute where we want to give the mentoring program to any minority researcher in lung cancer, regardless if they won a health equity grant. It just might be when we scale it up, they will still need permission from their program to participate, because we have the ones who get the grants have funding from us directly, and so the mentorship is an add-on. But we will still do the program. But if you just have institutional support, we would love to get more, and maybe we like to run 20 cohorts of 20 a year. I mean, that's optimistic, but I think that's about the max I can manage. I think we can do that though.
Oh, okay. You finally put a limit on yourself, huh? Dr. Eugene Manley, the bookworm, the director of STEM Workforce Initiatives at LUNGevity Foundation. Thanks so much for joining the Black Press of America this morning on our flagship morning show, Let It Be Known. We appreciate you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here, and I hope information I provided can help people. And we have all this information available for people, so feel free to look for it.
Absolutely. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great and safe weekend. We'll see you next week.